to my channel. I'm Kimberly and this is the Tickled Pink Events channel. And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining me for one of my videos. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I appreciate the support. And while we're at it, click subscribe so that way you will always see my newest videos in your feed when you come onto YouTube. But if you don't want to have to come to YouTube or wait, you can always hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button and you will get a notification the moment I have a new video go live. So with all that, let's get to tonight's video because it's story time. Yes, I know, I said story, I didn't say cocktail, but that is not a blooper, I meant it. Tonight, instead of making a cocktail, I'm gonna tell a story, but it is about booze, so you will hopefully learn something about whiskey and African American history because February is Black History Month, and this is an incredible story of a man who changed the way Americans produce and make whiskey. So with that, let me get started on the story of Uncle Nearest. Now I'm holding up this bottle because I don't know if you can see it, but it is Uncle Nearest 1856 Tennessee whiskey, and there is a difference between that and Kentucky bourbon, and I will get to that too. So this bourbon, or this Tennessee whiskey, is named for the man Uncle Nearest, who was born Nathaniel Green in 1820. He is known as the man who single-handedly gave birth to Tennessee whiskey. He was also the first African-American master distiller on record. He also invented the process called the Lincoln County method for distilling whiskey. And that method is the distinguishing factor that differentiates Kentucky bourbon from Tennessee whiskey. And that process is a process of filtering the bourbon through the charcoal of maple sugar wood. So you take the wood, you burn it, you get the charcoals, and you filter the water through it. He was taught this method by West Africans who also do the same thing to filter their water. So this man has done great contributions to the spirit and alcohol world. He is the world's best whiskey maker that you never knew. So tonight I thought I would help bring his story to the forefront so then you would know more about the history and the legacy of Uncle Nearest and the legacy of Tennessee whiskey as we know it now. And one thing you'll love is how he has come together to be a part of one of the world's largest and most popular Tennessee whiskey brands that you've heard of, probably have drank, and is probably sitting in your liquor cabinet now. So with that, let's talk about Uncle Nearest. I've got a little glass in honor of. I'm going to take a sip. Oh, this is so good. I want to tell you more about the characteristics of this later, but I really want to tell you the story of Uncle Nearest. Sorry, a little hot. So, back to Nearest. He was born Nathaniel Green in 1820 in Maryland. In the mid-1800s, he moved to Tennessee to work on a farm as a slave for a man named Dan Call. Dan Call was a preacher, but he was a preacher with a side hustle. He had a whiskey distillery, and the person distilling that whiskey was Uncle Nearest. And so, it was known throughout the county that this was the best whiskey. It was known to be super smooth. It had a great taste, and he was pretty famous for his whiskey. Now, around 1850, a young white boy came to work on the farm. He was not a privileged kid. He needed some extra cash. He was the youngest of 10, and he had lost his mother at 4 months old. But Dan recognized the kid was a hard worker. He was eager, so he gave this boy a job. Now, in the course of working on the farm, the kid notices all this noise and smoke coming from the distillery and wagons coming in and out, and it distracted him, and he asked Dan, hey, what's going on over there? What's the deal? So Dan took him up over the hill to the distillery, and he introduced him to Nearest, and he said, "This is Uncle Nearest, the finest whiskey maker I know." From that day on, Dan asked that Nearest would show this young boy how to make whiskey. And that was the start of a lifelong friendship and mentorship between Nearest and the boy. Nearest taught this boy everything he knew about whiskey making. And as time went on, the young boy grew up into a young man. And it turned out he was a killer salesperson. He had great salesmanship skills, and he himself started selling the whiskey all over the county. He was even selling the whiskey to Civil War soldiers who were fighting in the Civil War at the time. Now, 1865 came around, and that marked the end of the Civil War, along with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which made Uncle Nearest a free man. Now, at the same time as Uncle Nearest gaining his freedom, the young man, his mentor and friend, bought the distillery from Dan Call. And when he bought this distillery, he named it after himself. But as he bought it, he also hired, of course, the best distiller he knew, and then the best in the county, Uncle Nearest, to be his master distiller, where they continued to work and grow the business, and the whiskey gained wide popularity, even to the point where the young man decided, hey, I need to build a bigger distillery. I need to move to another piece of land and, keep growing my production. Well, at that time, Uncle Nearest, now probably a very older gentleman, decided he wanted to retire. And, he was like, I'm out the game. Good luck to you. But Uncle Nearest's sons and grandsons continued to work for the man at his new distillery location. And the Nearest family at this time in that community rose to prominence and respect due to the talent of whiskey making and their other skill sets. So this was, a whole culture and family and community that were into whiskey making, and, the whole county benefited from this process. So Nearest retires, the boys go on to help, and the man who started this distillery, or bought the distillery, and who to this day is still using Uncle Nearest's recipe and method, his legal name is Jasper, but his friends and family knew him as Jack, but we know him as Jack Daniels. Yep, I can tell you, my mind was like, what? Never, ever, ever did I know or think that an African American enslaved man was the founder, and developer of one of the world's biggest, best-selling whiskey brands, Jack Daniels. And they are today still using his recipe and his method to make one of the world's most popular whiskeys. Now, you may ask, well then, how did Uncle Nearest come about? Because Jack Daniels has a tight lockdown on that intellectual property and recipe, this of course isn't Uncle Nearest's recipe. However, it was started from a woman who originally started researching the history and the story of Uncle Nearest, trying to pull it out back into the light so people would know who was the man who was truly behind one of America's most popular whiskeys. So in the course of the years of talking to relatives and people who knew him and descendants, she really fleshed out the story of Nearest and got his biography down. However, she wanted to make a whiskey to honor him and to his legacy and to his great contributions to alcohol and spirits. So what she did is she bought a distillery in the same area as where the old Jack Daniels, the original, was distilled, and she actually hired the master distiller from Jack Daniels, which happens to be a woman. Another cool fact, their master distiller is a woman, and she used to work for Jack Daniels, and she retired, and now she works as the master distiller for Uncle Nearest. And it is a company that is wholly minority-led owned company. It is located in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and not only did they set out to make the finest quality and use the Lincoln County method, they have in fact turned out one of the most awarded New American premium whiskey brands. This stuff is gold. It is delicious. And before I even knew the story of Uncle Nearest, I loved this whiskey. And let me tell you about it right now. 1856 is one of the varieties of Tennessee whiskey they have. This one's 100 proof. It's a blend of 8 and 14-year whiskey, and it has a hot start because it's 100 proof, but a really caramely, long, rich finish, which is great for sipping, which is also the reason I didn't make a cocktail tonight. This is not the kind of whiskey, I mean, they have cocktails on their website, but this whiskey is perfect neat or with a cube of ice. It needs nothing else. It requires nothing else. But if you want to make a cocktail, sure. They also have Uncle Nearest 1820 and Uncle Nearest 1884, which are both single batch whiskeys. This is a premium whiskey, so it does cost a little more, but it's available at Trader Joe's. It is distributed through all 50 states. You should be able to find it at your Total Wine, your BevMo, and like I said, my Trader Joe's carries it. So I really encourage you to get out there, if you're a whiskey lover like me, to get out there and try this. It's delicious, but also to just pay homage to the man who gave us Tennessee whiskey. And so now, next time you enjoy whatever brand of Tennessee whiskey you enjoy, you have Uncle Nearest to thank, and you know that little known fact of African American history that I hope with the popularity of this brand and more people sharing the story will not be little known in 5 years, and we will all become knowing that Tennessee whiskey is synonymous with Uncle Nearest. So with that, guys, thank you for my story time, and you know what? Cheers to Uncle Nearest.